It's January 18th, 1871, and for the first time, Germany is a united power under one fully autocratic emperor, Wilhelm I. But in reality, all of it is the work of one man, Otto von Bismarck, also known as the Iron Chancellor. Beginning in 1860, upon ascending to the role of Minister President of the Prussian Empire, Otto von Bismarck used debate and diplomacy to produce a stronger Central European state. His diplomatic efforts resulted in the foundation of a Germany heavily influenced by the Kingdom of Prussia, in the process improving the lives of many people living in the region. So, how did this happen, you might be wondering? Well, to start, Germany only came into existence about 150 years ago, when the German states decided to unify right after the Franco-Prussian War, with Prussia being the catalyst. And so, Dan, what was Prussia in the first place? Well, to summarize, in the year 800, a certain Frenchman named Charlemagne, after forming the Carolingian Empire, was crowned Roman Emperor by the Pope, even if he had no relationship to the Roman Empire. However, after his death, his empire was split between his sons. So now skip ahead 100 years, and a German man named Otto I has revived the title of Roman Emperor, forming the Holy Roman Empire, which wasn't Roman or an empire, as it was more of a coalition of German states that only really shared an emperor, each state possessing its own ruler that had loose obligations to whoever the emperor was at the time. Fast forward another couple of centuries, and Napoleon Bonaparte has decided that he doesn't much like the Holy Roman Empire, choosing to dissolve it and turn it into a puppet state through military force. That brings us to Prussia, who is the predominant power in the north, for most of the Holy Roman Empire's existence. Now to Bismarck. Bismarck's childhood isn't very well known, but what we do know is that he was raised in a highly monarchist household in modern-day Poland, belonging to a well-known East Prussian noble family known as the Junkers. When he graduated from secondary school, he moved to Berlin to pursue his dreams of becoming a diplomat by studying law. Surprisingly, Bismarck wasn't the best student, frequently skipping classes and ad-libbing excuses for missing homework assignments. He did, however, manage to graduate from the University of Berlin and secure a job as a lawyer in Potsdam, which was cut short when his mother died, forcing him to return to the countryside to tend to his estates. While living there, he became infamous for his antics, such as letting foxes into ladies' drawing rooms or shooting a hole in his neighbor's ceiling. In 1847, he married Johanna von Puckhammer and had his first son. Shortly afterward, Bismarck was elected to the Landtag, or the Legislative Assembly, gaining a reputation as a monarchist and being heavily unpopular. After an unsuccessful revolution, Bismarck was promoted to the position of envoy to the Diet of the German Confederation in Frankfurt, essentially becoming Prussia's representative to the German Confederation, which was much like the Holy Roman Empire. Proving himself a competent diplomat, Bismarck was further promoted to the position of the Russian ambassador, before being withdrawn to serve as Minister President of Prussia in 1862. In 1862, shortly after becoming Minister President of Prussia, he delivered his famous Blood and Iron speech, stating that the great questions of the time will not be resolved by speeches and majority decisions. That was the great mistake of 1848 and 1849, but by iron and blood. Ironically enough, this whole speech patronized the power of debate, a tool on which Bismarck had based his whole career, claiming that iron and blood, or warfare, were more important. The idea of warfare brings us to our first major event, the Second Schleswig War. Upon the death of King Frederick VII of Denmark, German-speaking territories of Schleswig and Holstein were a topic of debate, with different sides claiming ownership. Bismarck unpopularly supported the ownership of it being to the Danish king Christian, but only as a state separate from Denmark. This was because these states were part of the aforementioned German Confederation. However, King Christian went against the German Confederation's wishes and fully annexed these territories into the Danish crown. Because of this, the Danish government was handed an ultimatum from both the Prussian and Austrian crowns, which brings us to our final piece of background information, the Austrian Empire. Essentially, Southern Prussia, a German-speaking country which had also been part of the Holy Roman Empire, and one that retained imperial ambitions, an Austrian-controlled Germany was the greatest competition that faced German unification under Prussia. But back to the event at hand, the Second Schleswig War. Denmark rejected the German demands, and so were. Skip ahead a couple of months, and the Danish territories have been split between Austria and Prussia. While this war might seem irrelevant compared to others, it to a small extent kickstarted the formation of Germany, as many soldiers from both Prussia and Austria found out they were much like their foreign counterparts, forming a so-called German identity. But the friendliness between these two nations did not last long. To everybody at the time, German unification seemed inevitable. The only topic of discussion was which nation would unify it. Austria under Großdeutschland, meaning Greater Germany, or Prussia under Klein Deutschland, meaning Lesser Germany. The Cold War between the two nations came to a standstill when the Gadsden Convention that split the Danish acquisitions between two nations was deemed to be violated by Austria. And while Austria had a far superior army, Bismarck had something many times greater: diplomacy. By entering in an alliance with Italy, a newborn country with its own imperial ambitions, specifically the gain of Venetia, and by guaranteeing French neutrality through a meeting with French Emperor Napoleon III, nephew of the first Napoleon, Bismarck won the first major victory of the conflict. Upon acquiring these things, Bismarck was ready for war, and on the 15th of June 1866, Prussia invaded Austria, citing Austrian violation of the Gastein Convention as their casus belli, or justification for war. Bismarck had likely been looking for any opportunity to assert Prussian dominance, with many scholars claiming that the convention had been rigged to fail from the start. Whatever the cause, on the 23rd of August 1866, Austria, Prussia, and Italy signed a Peace of Prague. The German Kaiser Wilhelm desired the entirety of Austria. Bismarck, on the other hand, was heavily against the idea, throwing tantrums, threatening to resign, and going as far as to threaten to jump from a fourth-story window should his wishes be disregarded. The Kaiser reluctantly agreed, and the peace resulted in Italian annexation of Venetia and a dissolution of the German Confederation. The German Confederations and also brought to life the North German Confederation, a group of northern German states with allegiances to Prussia. Only the South was left to be integrated. Bismarck thought the only way to do so would be to unify against a greater threat. In 1868, Spain had revolted against its queen, and in 1870 the throne was offered to Prince Leopold, who was a member of the Hohenzollern family, which ruled Prussia. Upon hearing of the German candidacy to the Spanish throne, Napoleon III was outraged and instructed the French diplomat in Prussia to demand that the offer be refused, and that the Hohenzollern branch never place a king in Spain. The first condition was agreed upon, but the second seemed too humiliating. And by editing the conversations between the two nations to sound insulting to both sides, he sparked a flame in both nations, importantly stirring militaristic sentiment in the lower German states. On the 19th of July 1870, the French sent a declaration of war to the Prussian government, and Prussia was at war once again, this time with the lower German states on its side. The war proved to be an overwhelming success for Prussia. The capture of Napoleon on the 2nd of September and the siege of Paris a few weeks later forced the provisional government of France to surrender on January 28, 1870, resulting in the annexation of the German-speaking territories of Alsace and Lorraine and the repayment of the war indemnities that Prussia had paid to the first Napoleon. Door and France had formed unbreakable bond between the German states, and by negotiating concession with the sovereign German states, Bismarck had finally accomplished his life's work. On January 18th, 1870, upon the capture of Paris, and a few days before the end of the war, the German Empire was declared, with Otto von Bismarck founding the role of Chancellor, a position still utilized by Germany today. The Chancellorship of Germany granted Bismarck a great deal of power, which he put to use, first on his culture campaign where he attempted to destroy the Catholic Church's power in German politics, bent on his policies, such as introducing the first modern welfare system, introducing pension to Europe, and supporting universal male suffrage. After German unification, he attempted to enforce peace throughout Europe, forming the League of the Free Emperors, allying Germany towards Russia and Austria, and calling for the Berlin Conference, which is widely known for kickstarting the scramble for Africa. In 1888, Wilhelm I died, leaving his son Frederick the Third as German Emperor. Frederick died just 99 days later, and Wilhelm II ascended to the throne. Bismarck and Wilhelm were opposed on many fronts, leading to Bismarck's forced resignation on the 18th of March 1890. Bismarck's alliance with Russia was also undone by Wilhelm a short while afterwards. On the 30th of July 1898, Bismarck passed away, leaving behind a gargantuan legacy. The partnership that he pioneered between Austria and Germany sparked the First World War. The position of chancellor that he had pioneered was occupied by Nazi leader Adolf Hitler in 1933, leading to the creation of the Third Reich, once again sparking a world war. The German Colossus was split in half once again in 1945 after a decade of warfare. After the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, Germany reunified in 1990. To this day, Germany retains a chancellor and still has in place many of Bismarck's reforms.